Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Denver, Colorado. I'm so glad you could join me today. I have a fall slimline card for you today. It's all about autumn, and the sentiment I put on the front is Season of Thanks, and then on the inside I put Happy Thanksgiving. But it could be a birthday card, or it could be a thinking of you card. It could be a get well card. It could be any number of things. Let's just get started. Okay, here is my card. And it's a little fiddly. There's quite a bit of die cutting to do. And then I did a sponged background here, although I used my blending brush and then I used daubers. You could use anything that you're very fond of for doing some of the blending. And this was the prototype, so it's not perfect. What it takes to make this card is I'm using a Whisper White base. And my slimline cards, I tried to make it as simple as I could. So this card is 8 inches by 9 inches, scored and folded at 4 inches. Just as simple as I could make it. And this fits perfectly in a number 10 envelope. And so this is a card that I need to do for a swap this time. And I have actually quite a few of them to make. So I've been busily cutting things out and getting things ready, and so I thought I would share it with you today. So I have 2 pieces of Blackberry Bliss that measure 3 7/8 by 8 7/8. So there's just the tiniest white border around the edge of this card. Then I have 2 pieces of Whisper White that are cut. Okay, this is cut 3 3/4 by 8 3/4. 8 3/4. So that it fits also just on the inside of this Blackberry Bliss base. And I have 2 of those, one for the inside of the card and one for the outside of the card. Now, what I did to achieve this is I used this paper, this beautiful Pretty Peacock paper, and it is from the Halloween paper set. It is the Magic in This Night Designer Series paper, and I'm using the piece that has this pretty black and white rose pattern on one side, but I was very interested in this piece. And you'll see that one of the things I did was you need a decent sized scrap of this. This one is about 2.5 inches, and you probably need maybe 4.5 inches. And I'll show you what I did. I used the Loyal Leaves stamp set, and I used this leaf right here with this very, very intricate veining pattern. And so what I did when I used that, and I'll bring one up here so you can see, is I put this stamp, it's on a block right now just so I can keep track of things, but I did this on a Stamparatus. And so let me bring this up so you can see it. And I used early espresso ink, and I put the leaf pattern on the Designer Series paper, and then I just fussy cut out the leaves. And I only needed 2 of them to do my card. I like the idea of this paper. So I used this paper to cut a couple of these leaves to make my card, and I've already got mine cut out. And then I used a strip of it along the side here, and then I used some of our reversible ribbon. It's Old Olive and Pretty Peacock, and then a piece of copper here. And so you need little scraps of, this is some of the designer paper from the Gilded Autumn, and I love this pattern, so I used that to cut out this leaf. And these leaves were taken from the gathered leaves, and I used this leaf die here to cut out 3 of these. I fussy cut this one out, and then also in this set you get a couple of other leaves, and they both emboss the leaf and they cut out the leaf, and there's 3 different sizes here. This one's more of a maple looking leaf, and these 2 are 3-pronged leaves. And I cut those leaves out using this Mango Melody. So I used Mango Melody, I used a bit of copper, I used Blackberry Bliss, and I used cinnamon cider. And I got this look by daubering around and covering the leaves with different colors of ink. And then on the inside, I put another piece of this pretty ribbon, a couple of the leaves, and I cut this leaf out in copper as well. And then from A Wish for Everything, the stamp set, it's a 2-box stamp set, I put in Happy Thanksgiving, and I use champagne rhinestones on this. I did get a set of these, they're called Sequins for Everything. I pulled out a bunch of gold ones, and I thought we would try those on the second card just to see what we thought. Okay, so that is the dies that I used, and then I used actually quite a bit of different inks. I used the Blackberry Bliss, I used Pretty Peacock, I used Cherry Cobbler, I used Mango Melody, I used Old Olive, and I used Pumpkin Pie, and a little bit of the cinnamon cider. But you can do it with whatever color combination you have handy, and I'll show you how I colored the panel and what exactly I did to get all of this. So the other thing that I have here is a strip that is about a 1/2 inch wide and then cut to the same length as my white piece here. Okay, so let's just get started. We can start in both instances by putting down the Blackberry Bliss on the inside and the outside of the card. So let's do that to start with. And I've got my seal here, and going to just, it's such a nice long piece of card. I'm feeling like I want to put an extra piece or so of glue on there. And this sits with ever so tiny a margin on my card. Oh, that stuck down before I was ready for it. I'll have to say that it's a little tougher to get these on here straight when you've got such a large piece of paper. But I can see 3 sides there, and if I've cut this straight, that should just about do it. There we go. All right. Now on to the piece for the inside. Make sure I've got that open right. And I will put my seal. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is put a little less seal in case I do have to lift this. That's still plenty to hold down my card, but if I got into trouble with this, I could certainly pick it up. Okay. All right. And again, if I can see 3 sides, I should be able to put this down so that it is even all the way around. And almost. Almost. There we go. All right. Now, for the inside of the card, I had put my ribbon down across all of the pieces, but on this one it looks like I'm going to have to do it just on the white, although I might be able to lift that and get that wrapped all the way around. So on the inside is probably easier to accomplish. Here I've got my piece of white that is to go on here, and then it has a long piece of this Pretty Peacock ribbon, which I've got ready to go here. And I found that the tape runner doesn't stick very well to the back of this ribbon. So I'm just going to put some dashes of snail down the side of this piece of white and put my ribbon down right along this edge. Don't you just love fall colors? They're just so pretty. And I've got a couple of things going on in my yard right now. I may post some things on my blog. I have a spectacular burning bush, and it is just as fuchsia as it can be. Just gorgeous. Okay, so that piece is down and ready to go. And that, I think we can go ahead and just put right on the card, and any glue that escapes you can just erase. So I think that's ready for some seal. And again, well, it's sticking to that ribbon. I couldn't get it to stick earlier. Okay, there we go. And again, this has got the tiniest margin. Oops, I want it to go like this. Around. Showing just a little bit of the Blackberry Bliss. And then I have already cut out my leaves that I needed, and I used the Gather Together stamp set, and I took this leaf from the Gather Together stamp set. I used Season of Thanks and this large leaf here, and then stamped a couple of different times here. On Cinnamon Cider, I stamped and then used the die to cut that out. And then I stamped it with Versamark on my Blackberry Bliss piece, and then used gold embossing powder on that piece right there. And then cut that out with a die as well. And I've already cut my pieces. And so on the inside of the card, I had just adhered this piece down. Let's see here. Right down here in this corner. And then I put a copper piece, this little copper leaf down here that I cut with the die from the leaves that go with the Gather Together. I guess it just goes right down there. And then I took one of these littler leaves and I used my Blackberry Bliss and put a little bit of Blackberry Bliss detail around on this leaf. And the die embosses the leaf, so when you go over it, it brings out the veining detail in the leaf, and I thought that was awfully pretty. And you see how it changes that mango melody and just takes down the color. Now you can always use more Mango Melody to brighten it back up again if you choose to. Gosh, that's a pretty combination. So this piece right down here, and I'm just going to lay all of these leaves are just flat on the card. It's on the inside and I don't want too much dimension down there. And then I used Pretty Peacock, and I have my stamps mounted, and I have my Happy, and I kind of put that at an angle right up here at the top. And then Thanksgiving, which is more of a block kind of script, right down here underneath. And that is the inside of our card done, with the exception of putting a gem. And I am going to put this sequin down there, and sequins are a little flatter than the rhinestones, so we'll see how this does. And I just put it right down here, and that way it brings the gold, the copper, the Blackberry, Bliss, and the Pretty Peacock to the inside of the card, and I think that's just lovely. Next, what I did was sponging of the white panel for the front of the card. Let me grab my panel and some scratch paper, and I used a blending brush, and I started with my lightest color, and that was this beautiful, I love this Mango Melody. It's such a pretty color. Now, when you're using whatever you're blending with, if you're using sponges or daubers or blending brushes, it's always good to give this a little bit of a dash off the card and bring it onto the card. And I find that I get a really nice blend with these brushes, and they're just makeup brushes. I think I bought them from a gal that has a little craft store in her home here in Colorado. The people that come to my classes kind of liked them, so I ended up getting more from her for them. But they're very similar to the ones that are on Amazon. And in fact, there's better and better blending brushes all the time for crafting. One of the things I did on this card is get a heavier hand on the left side of the card and just kind of fading away to the right, but I didn't want any of the stark white showing. And I'm going to deepen that just a little bit. This is one of those processes that is well worth the time to take your time with, because you can just build up the color to get something deeper and deeper as you go, and no two will come out exactly the same, and that's kind of the fun of it. But you don't get any harsh lines with the blending brush, which is something I just really enjoy. Having made messes of some of this kind of stuff in my early days of card making, as I didn't know really how to apply the stuff. And you can see that I'm getting a darker edge over on this end on the left, and then letting it kind of soften as it comes out of the card to the right. Okay, then in this order, I'm going to then use pumpkin pie, cinnamon, cider, then I'm going to use cherry cobbler, and then I'm going to use Blackberry Bliss. And this is tedious to watch, so I'm going to speed up the video and I'll be back in a flash. So next is pumpkin pie. Okay, there is my piece that is done, and you might even wonder that it would be easier to do this if you started with a pale yellow. You might be able to do it if you started with So Saffron instead of the Whisper White, but I love the buildup of the color, and you can see that this one is blended a lot better than this one. But that is part of the process, I think, as you learn about how this works. So then I have two pieces of my ribbon. What I'm going to do is put down a couple of beads of snail. I'm going to put the heat gun on this to dry the ink. That's a lot of ink that I was putting on there, and it's a little damp. Okay, so now I'm going to put my ribbon down across the card. Okay, and then I'm going to put some glue on the back of this and anchor my ribbon. Now then, I'm going to put a second piece of ribbon on the card, just above that. There we go. And then I'm going to anchor this piece on the back. I have cut a little strip of copper foil that is cut 3/8 of an inch, and to go right between those two pieces of ribbon to pick up a little bit of the copper color. And on this, I'm just going to add some seal to the back of it. And then I'm going to set this across the card. Here. And then I'm just going to trim it so that it fits perfectly on the front here. And there we go. On this, I think with the ribbon on here, this is now ready to go on the front of my card. So the first thing we need to do is lay down this piece that is cut. Let me make sure that that is cut exactly the same length. It is off by a bit. Actually, this was supposed to go on here before I put this piece down. So I'm going to add some seal to the back of my strip that I've cut here. Tell you, if I didn't do this once a card, there's something wrong. And I'm going to butt this right up against the edge of the card from top to bottom so that we can't see any of the card underneath. And then I am just going to trim this little edge off of there so that it fits on there just perfectly. And then I will rewrap this ribbon around the back. Okay, there we go. Now this piece is ready to go on here with a small margin of the Blackberry Bliss showing around the card. Now this piece is going to go on the front of the card. Isn't that pretty already? I just love this combination. So I have cut my leaves. Now what I did for this one, and that's on the cinnamon cider, is I stamped this in Blackberry Bliss, although it's hard to tell on here. You could do it, I think on this one I did it in cherry cobbler and it was a little brighter. So you might want to stamp this one in cherry cobbler. Then this leaf up here in the corner, and one of these pretty peacock ones underneath here. Then I took one of these, and one of my daubers, I use pumpkin pie on that. So I'm going to darken this up with a little pumpkin pie. And this one is going to go right up under here. Then this one that I cut out of that Gilded Autumn paper. And then this cinnamon cider one to just come on down the rest of the card. And then I took another leaves that I die cut out in the Mango Melody, and this one I went over that one with a little bit of the old olive, but I think on this one I'm going to see what it's like if I do it in Pretty Peacock. That's the one we'll have right down here. And then this is where we're going to stamp our Season of Thanks in Pretty Peacock right down here on the bottom of the card. So I'm going to put my Season of Thanks right down there. And then it's a matter of securing all of these items down and putting on our bling, and our project will be done. So while I arrange my leaves and put some of them up on dimensionals, I'll speed up this part of the video and be back in a flash. Okay, so I've got my leaves on. I do like this one better. And this one I used nothing but the blending brushes. And with this one you can see I got a completely different look by using blending brushes for the lighter colors and then daubers for the darker colors, and I carried the darker colors further across this. And then you saw me add a little bit of the Pretty Peacock around that one, and I like that one so well I added the pumpkin pie to the inside of this one, and I think it gives it just enough definition because this one was fading into the background. And so what I have are these little sequins that we're going to use on this card, and I am putting these sequins on glue dots here, and they're just the right size. They fit right on top of the glue dot, which means they will be very secure on the card. And I did have a few little Mars on the card, so I placed the leaves just so they would cover. Let's see how we do with that many of the sequins. I'm going to put one right up here and one right down here and one over here. I'm adding 5. I like doing these in odd numbers. They seem to appeal to the eye a little bit more when they're done that way. And right in here. Gosh, I think that is so pretty. So I'm very pleased with this. Like I said, it's a little fiddly. It takes a little quick bit of time to do. But if you're like me, you don't send out a lot of Thanksgiving cards. And like I said, this one for me is a swap. And I love putting a little bit of extra into my swaps. I just love the way this one came out. And I will have to say, I like the blending so much better on this one than I do on this one. But both cards I think are just fine. My Happy Thanksgiving, Season of Thanks, and there is my project for the day. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, or you could join my team. Joining after a quarter end is always a good time to join Stampin' Up! Because you get the full next quarter before your minimum is due. So if joining now, your first full quarter, when your first minimum is due, isn't until the end of March. So you have a nice long runway to get started. My prize draw for the month is a bundle of your choice out of any of the catalogs. And the way to get yourself in my drawing is to put an order of any size on my website, lbedinger.stampinup.net, and you can get to it through my blog, www.inkingenuity.com. It was so funny. I had gotten an inquiry on one of my YouTube comments of a woman who inquired, and she had put an order in, and sure enough, I drew her name. So Patricia, I hope I'm not mispronouncing it, Golub, G-O-L-U-B, is the prize winner for last month. She won the poinsettia. I'll be contacting her and letting her know about that. Thanks again for stopping by. I do so appreciate it. I'll be back soon with more cards, more tips, and more projects. Bye.